what are they missing? And I think the biggest piece is the thought that because Toyota used this tool, if I take this tool and I apply it to my business in the exact same way that Toyota did, that I'll get the same results that Toyota received. And that's not the case. It's not about the tools. Now, Toyota did some amazing things. Nobody can take away from that. But it wasn't. The tools were created as solutions to specific problems that Toyota had. Toyota's in the automotive industry. They have a different culture than we have. It was at a different time. There's so many differences. But what you can key in on is what was behind the tools, the methodology, the thought process, the fact that they created a learning culture where people there was psychological safety. So they had the freedom, the ability to experiment, to try things.
Welcome to the EBFC Show, the easier, better for construction podcast. I'm your host, Felipe Engineer-Manriquez. This show is all about the business of construction. Now, to the show. Welcome to the show, Patrick Adams. Patrick, welcome to the show. It's great.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. I loved being on your show, and I rewatched my episode. I'll put a link to the show notes there. You can see Patrick turn the tables on me, and I'm going to re-release that on my show. Patrick and I were chatting on LinkedIn, and I said, I was just coincidentally working on that copy. So with my editing team, we're going to get that up and posted so people can watch it when this show goes live and enjoy the two of us bantering back and forth. That'll give you like 2 hours of just lean chatter when you're ready.
But it's always fun.
It is awesome fun. And I love the studio. You've always had a great studio. And you and I both love the color blue because it's always behind us and around us every time we're doing something. I don't know if that's a function of you being so close to Lake Michigan or if that's just a similar coincidence to you.
That's a good point. I'd have to think about that. Why we use deep blues in a lot of the work that we do. I think there's meaning behind that. I don't know. I have to talk to my marketing team about that. I don't know. I know there's some meaning behind it, but no, I do always enjoy having that deep blue in a lot that I do. Yeah. But yeah, the studio, this is a new studio that in our new office, and just again, talking about things that have changed since the last time we talked. So we're in a new building now, and it's cool. I know not everyone is watching the video, but it's fun to mess around. Let me look here. There's a couple different
camera angles,
couple different angles here. So cool.
That's cool.
Nothing that I've ever had before. So it's fun we started out just recording in a home office. So it's fun to have something like this now.
Yeah, you have arrived, my friend. I love it. Yeah, I did do some research, Patrick, like a good host. I got to do my due diligence here. And I saw that the Lean Solutions podcast is just about to peak over 250 episodes since 2020, which is unbelievable. And I wanted to just ask you, get your reaction on that, and think about what's something that surprised you that shifted leadership or culture that you've noticed in those conversations since 2020, because you've had conversations for 5 years, like you said, a lot has happened with AI and other things.
I would say what's shifted since 2020. Wow, it's been a while, but regarding the podcast specifically, before I get into just leaders and conversations, a couple of years ago, we made the decision to bring in a couple new hosts, which I think has really helped us to stay consistent with the podcast and getting those episodes out every week. And this whole podcast idea for us, for Lean Solutions, started during COVID, actually, when we got kicked out of all of our client buildings. Doors were locked. We weren't allowed to come in. And I'm like, I want to continue having conversations with people. And I'd always had I always loved chatting about process improvement. Again, it's my passion. But we started hitting the record button on some of these virtual calls that we were having, just messing around, talking about different stuff. And then it obviously progressed and became a little bit more, I don't know that I would ever say professional, but we try to not be so professional. No, but it's been great. Over the years, we've really learned a lot and continued to improve that piece of what we do. And having some new hosts from around the world has really elevated the conversations, bringing in Andy from Australia and his kind of perspective from Australian culture. Catherine from Ireland brings in a whole nother side of things. So it's just been really great over the years. So that's been the progression of the podcast has been a lot of fun, really. And then from the guest point of view, to answer your question, and we've had so many different guests on over the years and a lot of repeat guests too, because sometimes we talk about something and in a 30 to 40 minute period, you can't get through the whole conversation. So you got to have people back to go a little bit deeper and talk a little bit more about some of the different aspects that were covered. But I would say probably the biggest change over the years, I think, is AI has been massive, I think, across all industries and everything that's going on. So it's been, in the last year, it's been brought up quite a bit. But what I will say, the one thing that hasn't changed is the need for coaching and experimentation, because things are changing so quickly in business. We can't just think that we know and understand what's going to happen a year from now, 2 years from now. You can't set goals and expectations for 12 months out anymore because things are changing within a month, 2 months. So you really have to be, as a leader, you have to be flexible to make adjustments accordingly as things are changing. And the way to do that is by really embedding scientific thinking or experimentation into everything that you do with a really good system around coaching leaders and proper coaching, not telling, but really listening, asking questions, and helping leaders to develop and learn as they're applying different tools or techniques to the business.
I love that answer, Patrick. And that's, as you were talking, it's like making me come to life, because I'm hearing all these things. And for people that don't know, this is another beautiful Zero Dark 30 recording of the show, because we got to respect the Eastern time zone that Patrick's in. But I am like getting charged up just hearing you talk about that. That really resonates with me and my experiences as well. And I'd love if you could just go into now, as a lean leader, what's one lesson or story you want to share from your experiences that has really made an impact on how others work? You mentioned coaching and working with leadership, and I saw even on your profile that now you're doing life coaching, like just explicitly, which I think is awesome. Like having somebody coach you up. People that listen to the show or get involved in continuous improvement, sometimes we forget, like a good analogy is just professional sports. Every great athlete has at least a single coach, and many of the top performing athletes have a team of coaches that are helping them improve their performance. And leadership can be exactly the same. And the very best leaders I know take on that type of development. So I'd love to hear from you a lesson or a story that's something that's helping you work with others that bring some of these examples to life.
Sure. Yeah, I think about, I guess the first story that popped to my mind is really customer focused, because that really, as process improvement professionals, we have to think about the customer, and whether it's the end customer or an internal customer, what is the value that we're trying to bring to them in the work that we do. And so the story that popped into my head immediately was with a company that I've been working with across the pond over in Kazakhstan. And this is a very large construction company. But I went and visited a site on my last visit, and it was to a hospital where they were basically doing a full revamp of the hospital and a little bit of expansion, some different things. There was a lot of construction work happening around this hospital. And the site manager, his name is Bixalton, took me for a walk around the site. And he, as we're talking and just chatting about some of the challenges that they had, he immediately told me about, he brought me all the way back to the beginning when they first walked the grounds of this hospital. And he said, we started walking and we were thinking about this project that we were going to put on. And at this hospital, in this small community, this is a developing country, small community, this hospital was so important to the people in that community. You can imagine, obviously, we know how important hospitals are, but in this particular community, small community, this was the only medical facility within miles. And so this was super important to the community. They couldn't just shut down the hospital in order to complete the work that needed to be done. And so they put their heads together and really thought deeply as a leadership team about how could they help make sure that the community was still able to access the medical help that they needed while the construction was happening. And so it turned into a voice of the customer conversation. And they set up some time to take the doctors and the nurses, the administrative team, everyone in the hospital at various times to go walk the hospital grounds and have some open conversation about what their needs were, and when they started construction, how would they continue to be able to serve the community with all of the construction that was going to be happening. And between the entire group over a couple days of walking and discussing and throwing some visuals up and doing some different things, they were able to come up with a plan to change the entrance to another location, to create some really nice hallways that were temporary hallways, but they wanted the people that were coming into the hospital to have a good experience, not a plywood on the walls and plastic hanging down and all these things. So they came up with a plan to create these really nice, elegant walkways to get into the hospital where the needs were, and then set up temporary location for emergency areas. Went through every aspect of the customer experience, from people that are coming in to just maybe pay a bill, to somebody that's coming in for an emergency, someone coming in to see a family practitioner. They went through every aspect of the hospital. And when he was walking me through the hospital, I could see how much they cared about the partnership that they had made with the doctors and the nurses. And we had some really great conversations just about the value of the customer and just how important it is. And when we're working on projects, always keeping that front of mind. And anyways, that was the first story that came to my mind.
Yeah, what I love about that story, and I know I work in construction,
Yes.
and I absolutely love how the builder took people on a walk
Yes.
and did the same with you. That is just great. That's not something supernatural. So, like, people listening to this is not. A lot of times we just conceptualize things in conference rooms or worse on a Zoom call, but being able to actually physically walk around is something very key to the way that we approach lean in our lean practice. And also it's unique. And there's some magic, I think, that happens, Patrick, when you're on your feet, walking and talking, and then seeing the things in real life. Absolutely love that story. And I think it really showcases like the power of being together and seeing the spaces. You could see the care that was talked
Yes.
about. It's much different than a photograph. Like, I'm recently doing a renovation project, and the team that's working just continuously reminds the customer that things are not as what they appear in the photos. The lighting's different, the scale's different. You can't get back far enough. And one of the people saying that now, with the technology just being so ever in our pockets, like, just shoot video instead of taking still fit photos, to give people a sense of the context of the space now. But I still think that being out there physically is phenomenal. I want to go a little bit deeper. What are some of the tools that you've helped implement with that hospital team, if you don't mind sharing some?
No, absolutely. When we first arrived in country, it was a little bit eye-opening, to be completely honest. This is a developing country, and a lot of what they're doing is, for them, for a lot of us in the US, many of us understand lean. We've applied it. There are certain business principles that we've been using for years. Going into this country, it was like they were learning a lot of this for the very first time. And not that they were behind, but it's something that just hasn't arrived there yet. And so for us, it was like, okay, we really have to think about, how do we lay the right foundation to really stabilize things in the beginning, to allow them that foundation to be able to then springboard and grow and improve into the future. And there were a couple things that we saw right away. Standard work was a big piece that was necessary. And then just a daily management system in general. We felt like with a good daily management system, good standard work, that would be a good place to start with. Now, what I will say was, there were some patches when we got there, some things that we saw where we could tell that they had maybe tried to do some things on their own. There were definitely some artifacts, I would call them, maybe not necessarily lean artifacts, but some visual management that I could see. A lot of what I saw when we arrived there was more what I call the appearance of continuous improvement. They had put up some cool quotes on the walls, and they had some visuals that kind of gave some instruction of what was necessary or what the expectations were, but they're gathering dust. They had stuff stacked in front of them. You could tell right away that it was more of an appearance versus actually understanding how to apply the principles and get real measurable results from that. And so again, we started with the basics, and we really felt like a daily management system from daily huddles at the project sites with what they can call masters and foremen are the positions that at the project sites. So a daily huddle, tier 1 meetings, and then we went on to develop tier 2 meetings, more project based. So total project site versus like blocks where they would have their tier 1s. And then even a tier 3 where it was multiple projects in one meeting. And so giving them an opportunity for escalation of problems, first identification of problems at the tier 1s and some problem solving, and then an ability to escalate issues up if they weren't able to be solved, and also to communicate, create that feedback loop to get feedback back to the team. So a couple of those I would say were the first things that we worked on with every project site, including Exalton's project. And I think that laying that foundation, really thinking about stability first, you can't improve in chaos. You have to start by stabilizing the process. And then once you have a good, stable process, then you can start to incrementally improve going forward.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's interesting you start with leader standard work in the daily management system. These are two hallmarks of some of the very best lean culture starting points that I've ever seen. So I love that you help with that. If you don't mind, like, what would you say was the impetus of them contacting you and you get involved? What's their big why that they wanted your help with?
Yeah, good question. So they have a board that oversees the entire corporation, and the chairman of the board had attended a class in the US and had learned specifically about the Danaher business system, and then was looking for a US-based company that could come and help them understand a little bit more about continuous improvement principles. And we were reached out to, in addition to, I think, I don't know, 4 or 5 other companies in the US, and then went through an interview process. And through that interview process, got to meet a lot of the executive leaders at the company, and they chose Lean Solutions as the company that they wanted to utilize. And again, the first trip over there, just meeting everybody, getting to know them, understanding their culture. I'll be honest, in the beginning, I wasn't sure if it was a scam or not. When in the beginning, I'm just being honest. When they first reached out to us, Kazakhstan, hadn't really heard a whole lot about Kazakhstan, and so I had to do a little bit of my own due diligence, and come to find out that Paul Akers had been working with their board of directors, their executive leadership team. So Paul and I had some conversations about the trips that he had been taking them over to Japan on. And then him and I partnered up to put our heads together on the best approach to help them reach the goals that they have as a company.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, when you first mentioned this in chat on LinkedIn, I remember immediately a video that Paul Akers shot. Because when he went there, he shot a video, because that's what Paul does. He just shoots
Yes.
video now, like, everywhere. He's amazing. I think he has a camera that just pops out of his sleeve now. But I also looked them up too to see where they were in the world. Like a good American, my geography is limited.
Right.
So I looked them up on Google Maps, and they are like adjacent to Russia. So that's where, for people listening, like, just put a sense of where they are in the world. And yeah, I think that's interesting. Like, you get interviewed, there's a good selection process. And for a lot of folks listening, they might not be aware. Like, I've studied Danaher, and I've known some people that work there and retired, and you just can't stop doing the work. So they now do lean consulting full time. Could you tell people just a little bit about Danaher and why that's an interesting company that they latched onto?
Yeah, I think probably the best, I guess, piece to talk about is the Danaher business system. The fact that they created a really nice system. I think about, even another example of that is the Entrepreneur Operating System, EOS, which is
Yes.
more recent. But it's not that they're introducing anything new necessarily. Now, some of the things in the systems have been tweaked to fit their company or their approach or whatever it might be. But a lot of it is the same stuff. That the largest benefit to these systems is the fact that they're systems. They cover every aspect of the business. It's not just hey, this will work out in your manufacturing plant to help make sure machines are running efficiently. No, this is like purchasing, sales, strategic planning, operations, every aspect of the supply chain. It's a total business system that helps to integrate process improvement principles into every piece that's important for the business and to achieve the targets that they have and to ultimately add more value to the customer. So I think that was probably what they keyed in on. Was prior to this, like I mentioned before, I saw some little patches of things, but it was like one piece, one tool that might have been introduced to them could help them with 5S, for example, maybe some organization stuff, but it didn't get embedded into maybe how they were planning and the pre-planning their construction projects or the development up front with engineers. So then a lot of the problems from that would ripple out into the projects and cause a lot of issues that, if I organize my project site, of course, that's important and there's definitely value there. But if you're not looking at every aspect of the business or every aspect of the value stream, then you can improve one small piece and you can make it really efficient and really good, but it's not going to make you be able to deliver at the end any faster because you might have a bottleneck here or a slower point here that's hanging things up. So you really have to look at the total business, and a business system like Danaher, EOS, there's many of them that we can talk about, but that's what they keyed in on, was the system itself.
Yeah, I love EOS. So any lean nerds listening to this podcast, you got to pick up that book, Entrepreneurship Operating System, EOS. I forget the author of the book, Patrick. Maybe you remember his name. And
Ooh, I don't.
That's okay. We'll let
Top of my head.
the audience is very intelligent. They can do the research and tell us in the comments. But yeah, fascinating. I know it's in my library on Audible. That reminds me of like in Danaher and in EOS, there's some focus on really deeply understanding your current state. And I know from some of the Danaher examples that people have talked about is that they typically can come in and like double, triple, quadruple, quintuple profit of an existing business when they apply these systems and systematize things. In your work here in Kazakhstan, were there any KPIs or key indicators that they had alluded to during the initial dating phase with your company that was important to them? And then what, if any of those, have you been able to influence?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm gonna say something here, and if anyone from this company is listening, this is not a hit on you. This is just the reality of many businesses that we work with, and I think it's a really good story. When we first arrived there, we started talking about KPIs and metrics and how they measure business impact, and they had a lot of really great ways to do this. But what we said was one of the things we look at is safety first, quality, delivery, and cost as some high-level areas to set some metrics, and obviously explained why and went through the whole deal. And what their response was currently, which this is changing again, don't take offense to this, but currently our priority is cost first, then delivery, then quality, then safety. And it was the opposite. And so we had to have some conversation about, now they do, from a safety standpoint, I had to ask them, obviously, what do you mean you don't care if someone gets injured on site? Was that, and they're like, no, but for us, we work with a lot of subcontractors, and we really feel like it's the subcontractor's responsibility to keep people safe, not necessarily us as project managers. And we had to have some open dialogue and some conversation about the fact that safety should be a priority. And when people feel safe on a project site, that they're going to be more effective for you. And you, as the project managers of the project site, really should put a priority on safety and quality over cost and delivery for these particular reasons. And so those conversations started in the beginning, and there has been, over the last couple of years that we've been working with them, there's definitely been a shift in that mentality. In fact, they're going into this next year with a focus on creating a quality management system for the entire company that will raise the priority or the importance of quality on project sites. Now, of course, they have good quality, but they want to have great quality. And so that's something that they're looking at going forward. On time to delivery, as far as the projects go, has always been a challenge and a struggle. They have a lot of projects going on. There's a lot of variables that are happening within these project sites, multiple blocks inside of one particular project. And we were talking about apartment high rises or stadiums, theaters, lots of different, very large scale projects, and working with them on their project plans and what that looks like and how to have success with that has also been a big focus.
We hear all the time that building enclosure is the #1 problem in construction. And when the task of the building enclosure is presented with so much pressure, it's something most of us would want to avoid. Until now, there has never been a course to teach someone how to manage a building enclosure. Building enclosure is a problem for every company, and the solution is often to ask someone within to try to find training or provide training to their teams to avoid these issues. Field Verified's enclosure management course is the answer to that problem. We learned the hard way, we've learned through failure, we've learned from others. This course, our team, will help those people who are assigned to manage the building enclosure be successful the first time so that they're spared some of the suffering and hardships that all of us went through. There's so much opportunity for a high return on investment, not just when an individual attends and all of the skills that they'll achieve, but when a team participates together, they can raise their level of performance by knowing what each other can do, what to expect, and they can raise the level of performance of that company as their careers excel and the company elevates along with them. The training is built on the science of how people learn. We capture all of the components that are necessary to master a skill. There's a hands-on component to the training where we're building a masonry mock-up, a metal panel mock-up, we're doing EFIS, and even installing a window that later you get to test. The hands-on training gives us the opportunity to translate the lines on paper to actual construction in the field. We always laugh because after the training, people come up and say, you know, this isn't just about building enclosure. There's a lot of leadership in here. There are a lot of people skills. That's because those skills are necessary to be successful in building enclosure and in construction. We'd love to see you get started right away. We have lots of options available. They can come to us in person at Field Verified in Phoenix, or we can bring the entire operation to your facility and train up to 25 people at a time. And we've created an online training that's available for people who might not be able to attend in person. Go to the website and contact us. We're going to start by understanding what problems you're currently experiencing and develop a specific program that's right for the needs of your company.
Yeah, that's incredible. You reminded me as you were telling me this story. And I've been working in the construction space for my entire career. About a decade ago, a friend of mine, Crom, and I started doing this book study on the Toyota Way. And those 4 areas that you mentioned, safety, quality, delivery, and cost, they're key in understanding businesses as a system. And during that book study, he and I were, we were chatting over an adult beverage. And we were just talking about how every contractor we know has those wrong and looks at them in the opposite way. Like you mentioned, it's not a knock. I think it's what gets put so much attention, like in the everyday grind of work. Leaders get held to these different metrics, and there's incentives in their system that unknowingly and sometimes invisibly put the priority of cost above everything onto the people trying to make the change or sustain a process. And even in the like our friends in Europe say, the tendering process or the contracting process in the United States, how we say it, the contracting process from the client also puts a lot of emphasis on first costs as well in construction. So if we apply some systems thinking, it's a reinforcing feedback loop that makes us focus on the wrong thing, and it gets it harder to improve. Like I will say to people listening, when you start looking at these different companies that are extremely successful, have positive culture, safe culture, not only safe in terms of physical well-being, but also mentally, psychologically safe, where people can bring up issues and problems without fear or retribution. Those companies that do those things well have exponentially better cost performance than when people focus on cost first. And it's not intuitive. It's definitely not intuitive, but yeah, I just love I love and hate, Patrick. I tell this to people all the time, like, I had another friend of mine, we talked about construction. The United States has exported its construction practices globally. And anywhere where I've bumped into people in other countries that speak English, in addition to their native language, they've adopted a lot of our methodologies, which are not necessarily good. And a lot of the things that we do we could trace back to the 1870s in our country and it hasn't evolved in a lot of different ways, which is great for people like us, Patrick. There's guaranteed work for life. But I love that those changes. What are some of the KPIs that you saw move? Can you take me deeper into one of those areas where they started shifting away from focusing on cost and some of these other areas? Where did you take them and what happened?
Yeah, if you focus on quality quality, we'll just talk about that since I mentioned it already. When I would walk some of these project sites, we'd have conversations with the foreman about observations that we would see, and we would get a little bit deeper into these from a quality perspective. Maybe I would see maybe some concrete stairs that are not exactly in the US. We have certain standards for the height of stairs. There was a site where, that this definitely wasn't the case, and they did not follow any type of standard. And so we had a conversation about this, and they explained to me that the subcontractor that was working on these particular stairs has since been replaced, and they're working to repair this. But my question was around, what is the standard? What do your subcontractors have to adhere to? And do you have something like that in place? Not just a standard, but also what's the accountability look like for that? So how do you ensure that if you've put a standard in place, how do you ensure that the team members are following the standard? And so there was a deeper conversation about that, and then a really good conversation about how do you measure it? How do you measure quality on a construction site in a way that you can actually identify problems, bring problems to the surface, and then do some problem solving, and then actually solve that? So have some solutions that get put in place, and hopefully some of those, whatever you're tracking, that quality issue gets reduced or eliminated. And actually, I would say it took us quite a while working with the foreman and the masters to figure out, how do you measure quality on a project site? And what we came up with at the tier 1, so this is master level or foreman level individuals who are out, let's just say on a apartment building on a daily basis. What are we talking about each day? When we meet with the subcontractors, we meet with the team, what's our conversation about when it comes to quality? And what we talked about was, what did we expect to happen yesterday? What were some of the goals that we set yesterday? And how did we do on that? Were we able to hit those goals, not hit our goals? And then where we couldn't hit our goals, what are we going to do differently today to make sure that we're hitting those goals when we stand here tomorrow? And when it came to quality, it was like, what do you measure on a daily basis? And what the team came up with was, we're doing hourly walks anyways. And we're going out and we're having conversations with the subcontractors on an hourly basis. When we're out there, if we've established standards, quality standards specifically, let's take a minute to just look at them and do an audit per se of the stairs or the railings or the walls, the drywall, the whatever it is. And can we put some measures to that? Something simple to start. A 1 is bad, a 5 is good. Okay, what is good? What does good look like? Let's take a couple pictures and let's determine what is a 5, and let's take some pictures of what a 1 looks like. And that will help you to give yourselves a number. So what we ended up with was basically a really great system for the masters to be able to walk an area, a block, for example, in an hourly basis, and with a simple sheet and a really simple numbering system with what good looks like, what bad looks like, or what a failure would look like, you can give a number. So then the next day they're coming together and they're saying our average score was 3 or 4, whatever it might be. What brought us down? We had a couple failures. These were the failures. And then they start paredoing those. So what we had conversations about, we don't want to take knee-jerk reactions on every single failure, and unless it's something that's either safety related or from a quality perspective is going to impact the end result, right? Something that needs immediate attention, then yes, we take immediate action. Other things we're paredoing to go, okay, let's look at where are the patterns at, and then let's do some active problem solving around those types of things. So they are coaching the subcontractors on those items when they see them, but they're also paredoing and looking for repeat issues which then get rolled up. And then as it progresses, we start looking at systemic issues that are happening across multiple blocks or across multiple projects. And there's some higher level problem solving that's happening in order to reduce some of those systemic issues.
Yeah,
Hopefully that answers your question.
yeah, it absolutely does. And I'd say for the listeners, we have a lot of young listeners now, Patrick, that they don't have the history like we do or sometimes the trauma. Could you just explain the Pareto and what do you mean when you say Paretoing? Like you don't have to go into the Italian mathematician history.
Yeah.
Don't go that far back.
Yeah. Yeah. The easiest way to think about it is 80% of our issues are created by 20% of the opportunities hopefully I said that. Sometimes it gets mixed up, but basically, like we don't want to go after everything. If we try to chase after every single issue that pops up, we might be chasing things that aren't giving us a good end result. We might be spinning our wheels or working on things that don't matter. So we really want to look at what are those few items that are happening regularly or maybe are having a larger impact on the bigger part of the business. And let's focus in on those few items, solve those so that will bring the majority down, the majority of the issues down. Does that help?
Oh yeah, it definitely helps. Yeah. Yeah, listeners, we'll put a link into some of these words that we're using here that we know and love and use all the time, but we'll put a little glossary just to help ease in, especially if you're new to this. And I think a lot of people are new to this. These are concepts that are not taught systemically in any kind of school system. These are things that you just pick up and learn as
Right.
you become a practitioner. So I think that's
Be nice if
fantastic.
they were taught.
It would be nice. Yeah. Or if they're lucky to go to your class, Patrick, in Arkansas.
Well, they should be taught at the elementary and middle school level.
Yeah.
These are concepts, problem solving, data-driven decision making. These are concepts that if you're listening in and you're a high school or middle school teacher, check the links that are thrown in the show notes and add this to your curriculum because kids need to learn this stuff.
I feel like you're listening in on my conversations with my poor teenage son. We were having a debate this weekend and he made a statement. I said, show me the data. I hear what you're saying, but show me the data. What's this based on? Gut feel is not sufficient to win this argument because then it's just your gut feel against my gut feel. But I have a feeling there's some data we can look at and some data points. And I tell you, Patrick, that he does not like debating me.
But you can't debate when you have data, like real good data. You can't. I won.
Yeah, we used some visual controls, and I told him, I was like, I'm not interested in winning the argument. It's too easy. I was like, but why don't you write down what you're saying, and let's stand back and look at it and see if your data supports your position.
There you go.
And it didn't. So that was
but he probably learned a whole lot out of that conversation.
He did. He absolutely. And it was like when you can stand back together and look at the visual, it takes the edge off of the me versus you type of mentality. Now we're just looking at a problem together, which is a much better viewpoint. So I like that story. Like you started taking the team through some root cause analysis and helping them develop a way to put some numerical measures on quality, which can be very subjective for some people, but you get some consensus around what's a 5 versus a 1. That can be very powerful for people that don't have a language of quality today. Did you notice anything on the production or like the speed of production? Did you hear even any stories from the masters or the foreman or even the leadership that talked about what type of impact did this work have on their ability to deliver projects on time or nearly on time? Because I know, like for everyone listening, there's a lot of variation in construction projects, and it's not as simple as I promised to do something in 12 months and I finished in 12 months. It's very complicated and complex work, so we don't always have the ability to tell the story of like how we got to where we got to until you use some systemic tools.
That's right. Yeah, I actually, I don't know if it was my last trip or the trip before, but I was at they had put on a company party where there were a large number of individuals in attendance from both the South and the North sections of this company. And I had previously been working in the South personally, and then this particular get together was in the North. But Darkan, who's another individual that I worked with in the South he was a site manager at a project in the South. He happened to be at this little get together and we ran into each other and he was ecstatic to see me. And I have to tell you this. We worked with their team, I don't know, over a couple months during the beginning, we might have been a little ways into this particular project, very large project. And we helped them develop their daily management systems, their tier systems, their leader standard work, and really tapped into even the executive leaders back at the head office to come and do consistent Gemba walks and coach them on how to properly coach, asking the right questions when they're on these Gemba walks. And actually, I have some good stories about that too. But so anyways, Darkan comes up to me and he says, I have to tell you, when we started, we were behind on this project. I can't remember exactly how far behind, but maybe a month or something to this effect. And he said, we ended up finishing the project early. And he said, no one thought we could do it, but because of the systems, because of the stability that we created early on in the project, and then the systems that were put in place in order to allow us to continuously improve every week, every day, we were able to complete the project early. And so it was a really cool thing. I'm heading back there in October, and I'm going to have dinner with Darkan to talk a little bit more about the details of that and what happened, because I was only there for a few months in the beginning, and then he kind of took things, which is what we want. We want them to own it, right?
Right.
Those that are in the process should own it. So that's exactly what happened, and he was happy to report that they completed the project early.
I love that story. Another successful application of lean helping a team. And you kept the responsibility with the people doing the work, which is great. Yeah, tell me about one of these coaching stories. Let's dig in.
Okay, so I'm definitely not going to name any names here, but what I will say, and I've said this already, but this particular company, the people there are amazing. The culture is amazing. They have, from the top, the shareholders at the top, they're fully invested, fully engaged in continuous improvement, and all the way through to the frontline workers that are on the project sites. And so just everything about the leadership side of things is great. In the beginning, there were some challenges though. And I'll say bringing some of the executives from the head office out to the project site. Again, these are great people. They were very coachable, wanted to know what can we do to help support. Obviously, they have their own responsibilities back at the head office, but they wanted to be part of this initiative. And we had them attending some of the huddles. And part of what we realized very quickly is there's some different cultural differences and things, but they have a certain way of doing things that they've just they just used to doing it a certain way, just like any company, whether it's over in Kazakhstan or in the US. But what I noticed right away was that a few of the executives during the huddle, while the foreman and the masters were talking with the subcontractors or reviewing some of the metrics, they would be on their phones to the point of even like answering a call or stepping outside the circle and texting or whatever it was. And so we had to have kind of a bit of a conversation about this and created some rules. Again, not that they were doing anything wrong. That was just they were used to that being okay in meetings. They can do other work. But we had helped them to understand the feeling that the masters get or the foremen get when that type of thing is happening, and that we really need them to be fully engaged in the conversations, because their job is to really look for opportunities to remove roadblocks that they're seeing while they're there on site. And so we created some rules around no cell phones, fully engaged, and again, helped coach some of these executives on how to ask proper questions. Because one of the other things we saw, again, a cultural thing, but an executive would step into the middle of the circle and start to talk about a topic and almost teach, like in the middle of the huddle, and which is good. They wanted to help, but what we wanted them to do more was we had to coach them on maybe let's do that after the huddle, and because that's important stuff, but let's allow the foreman to complete the full agenda before we do any kind of coaching or teaching. And then, but asking questions is okay, and allowing the foreman to answer those. So again, just establishing some of those expectations and standards on even behavior within huddles was important in the beginning. And again, we're also working through an interpreter or a translator. And so having those conversations, like when someone steps off to take a call and I'm like, you need to be here. Yes.
Yeah.
Not easy, but they were very receptive. And again, I've actually seen they put out some really cool videos and pictures of all the work that they're doing. And I started to see these boxes that they've put together where everyone has to, I know this sounds like elementary, but everyone has to put their cell phones in the slots when they come into a meeting. And I'm sure there are people listening. I know it sounds elementary, but think about the meetings that you go into and how many people are typing on their computers, texting, stepping out to take calls. How much work is actually getting done, and how effective are those meetings? So just a word to the wise. It might sound elementary, but it's a pretty amazing little tactic.
Yeah, that's a huge productivity booster. Patrick, I've had to even tell people, like I sometimes teach courses in Lean and in Scrum, and I let them know, I said, your company's investing thousands of dollars for you to be here today. And the expectation is that you're here to absorb and practice and get hands-on
That's right.
application so you can transform. It's not so that you can stay up to point on email. And I'll even make jokes about every cell phone's got this technology called voicemail. Some of you don't know what that is, or you pretend not to know. And you've got voicemail boxes that are full and you just answer every call as it comes in. And I said, if you don't control what you're doing, you let everybody else have control of what you're doing. And I was like, now that I've told you, you just decide what you're going to do with that. And just know that I'll be judging you when I see you on your phone at the wrong time. I was like, we laugh about it, but there's a lot of stuff that goes into cell phones today that make it super addictive and hard to let go. So I'm not surprised that they've instituted the put your phone in the box protocol, because the addiction is very strong. Like I've even found myself in meetings, like you could feel my hand. The next thing I know, my hand's on my phone. I'm like, how'd that happen? It's powerful. So that's a good story. You did not disappoint. Now, Patrick, I know it's hard to believe, but we're coming to the end of the show already. Like it's just, the time has just flown by. I know. I wanted to ask you, I would feel like it would be a huge loss if I didn't get you to chime in on one more thing. Selfishly, what I need as just a curious bystander here. I think when you look at all the things you've done, and you've mentioned now construction projects, and when I first bumped into you, you were heavy into manufacturing, and now you're doing education. So when you look across all these industries where you're practicing Lean with different people, what's one common misunderstanding about Lean that you'd love to clear up for people that might just be getting started with it?
Yeah, I would say that the biggest thing that I see across so many organizations is what I call the appearance of Lean, but the continuous appearance versus continuous improvement. And that's why I wrote my book, was because I see it so much. And I didn't realize when in the book, I talk about company continuous improvement, which was the company has an amazing continuous improvement culture. But I didn't realize how good we had it. I didn't realize how amazing it was until I got outside and I started to go visit all these other organizations in all different industries. And I was thinking to myself, like, what are they missing? And I think the biggest piece is the thought that because Toyota used this tool, if I take this tool and I apply it to my business in the exact same way that Toyota did, that I'll get the same results that Toyota received. And that's not the case. It's not about the tools. Now, Toyota did some amazing things. Nobody can take away from that. But it wasn't. The tools were created as solutions to specific problems that Toyota had. Toyota's in the automotive industry. They have a different culture than we have. It was at a different time. There's so many differences. But what you can key in on is what was behind the tools, the methodology, the thought process, the fact that they created a learning culture where people there was psychological safety. So they had the freedom, the ability to experiment, to try things, and to fail potentially. And instead of being reprimanded for a failure, the comment may have been, what did you learn? Or the question, what did you learn from this? And how can we improve this so that it doesn't happen again? Or maybe they're thanking someone for identifying a problem. Thank you for bringing this problem to the surface so that we can now solve it. Now we can see it so we can actually go after it. Versus many companies who have this culture where red is bad and don't tell me about your problems. Don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. And that mentality, it creates the opposite of psychological safety, and it creates a very toxic environment where people aren't going to bring their problems to the surface. They're not going to raise their hand when they make a mistake because it's looked down upon. And so I think a lot of that, again, it's not about the tools. It's not about these 10 tools and just apply these to your business and you'll be lean, which again, going into an organization and they're like, yeah, we're lean. Look, here's our value stream map. And there's this map on the wall that, is a current state map, no future state, maybe even no timeline on the bottom. And you can tell that it's clearly been up there for a few years. And are you really understanding what's behind this map, or why did you even create this? What was the purpose of it? It's way more than wallpaper. And so I think that's probably the biggest misconception that I see across so many industries, is just not understanding what's behind the tools. That's where the real, true continuous improvement is going to take hold.
Yeah, Patrick, thank you so much, man. What a beautiful landing to that topic. And I love everybody pick up his book, The Appearance Trap. It is a Shingo award-winning book and highly recommend it. I've read the book. I love it. And Patrick
Appreciate
and I had a deep dive about that some years ago when it first came out. So I'll definitely put a link in the show notes down below. Take a look, people, get that book, read it, and understand why it's not just about appearances. Thank you so much, Patrick, for being on the show. Have a great and wonderful day.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. Once again, it's always good to catch up with you and have some good conversations. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Very special thanks to my guest. I'm Felipe Engineer-Manriquez. The EBFC Show is created by Felipe and produced by a passion to build easier and better. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, everybody. Let's go build.